Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pod TV's number one do-it-yourself TV show with Irene Parker, Timeshare Solution or Surrender. And this is where we provide wonderful tips and direction and ideas to people on how they can find solutions to the timeshares that they feel like they're not getting enough value out of, or from the deceptive acts of timeshares. And don't forget the deceptive acts of the worst timeshare exit companies, which I've actually had a few dealings with myself lately. So just be aware. This show's all about be aware. Don't buy until you've tried, which, by the way, you can't really try your timeshares until 30 days 90 days after you buy it. And by then you don't get to say you don't want it. So be careful. Listen to what we have to talk about here on the show. Here's my superhero, Irene, who has done so much help in giving guidance to people. And sometimes it's more about listening to their problems, holding their hands a little bit, then they can start thinking clear. Right? You're not really doing the work for them. You're just helping them think clear and see, the light at the end of the tunnel of what to do.
And members supporting members is a very powerful tool, and for that reason, members supporting members, Cindy has been drafted into TARTA to be a volunteer for us. And is that a Minnesota T-shirt I'm seeing beneath that blonde hair?
Well, it was my favorite, my husband's favorite team, and for the last game of the playoffs, even though they weren't in it, I wore it. But yeah.
Well, I'm glad you wore it today because either we're psychic or somebody's really helping us out here. Because last week Cindy went through her notes from a trade block presentation that was some very bizarre claims made. That was January 20th. On January 23rd, the Minnesota Attorney General announced a settlement with Trade Block, Encore Law, and the creative name of Last Resort Consulting. So as a result of that, I have invited our guests. When we're not lawyers, so when someone says to me, should I stop making loan payments? Should I stop making maintenance fee payments? What happens? My answer is watch Pod TV episode 24, August 5th. And that Mike gives quite a bit of information about that. And our last guest that I've asked to join us today is Bill from New York. And Bill contacted me in 2019, and I hadn't heard from him for a couple of years, so this just seemed meant to be as well. I said, hey, your buddy Mike Finn's going to be here. And even though Bill never retained Mike, he watched his hero, Dave Ramsey. Cindy, you mentioned that you're a Dave Ramsey fan too, and recommended an exit company. You paid them $12,000 and financed that upfront $12,000, and then they told you had to continue to make mortgage payments to Wyndham and Holiday Inn. So it just tripled the problem. And in desperation, I said, well, why don't you talk to Mike Finn? So I think, Mike, when we talk about just supporting people, thank you for that. So we're talking about Mike's favorite topic today, which is exit companies, and why, the questions that, and probably well over 50% of the people that contact us have lost money to exit companies. There's a couple that I think that are trying to do the right thing, but for the most part, there's just far too many scams out there. And Kim she sent me a 30-minute of a company that really people should watch out for. Hilton Grand Vacations is the name of Hilton Grand Vacations. Before they purchased Diamond Resorts, Diamond sold US collection points, Diamond US collection points. So now Hilton is selling US collection points. And though people that buy those are the Hilton Vacation Club, and Kim got a call from the Grand Vacation Club that said she could buy 6 getaway weeks from RCI for $99 to $399. And in, I forget, it was 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, but she was guaranteed
90. Yes.
90 days, guaranteed a check for $8,400. And when I went to BBB, 2 people complained, said they said 90 days, but in 90 days, they told me it would be 180 days. So pack rat that I am with computer files, I found Mike's article from May of 2019. And the first, at the top of your list was listing companies that charge an upfront fee. And you mentioned something in your article, if we could start with these listing companies, because Club Exploria is telling people to sign up with timeshares only, including our board president. And they said for $400 or $800, yes, go ahead and list that Club Exploria Summer Bay for $8,000 to $11,000. So to start with, Mike, why are the ARDA and a couple of the developers telling people not telling people to go to one of the 60 resale brokers that function like traditional brokers that don't charge up front, but they're sending people to Sell My Timeshare Now and Timeshares Only that try to justify their listing fee? So take us from there.
Well, number one, I have to say, I love the name of that company that you referenced a couple of minutes ago, the Last Resort Consulting Company. I think that's a very interesting title. Thinking of changing the name of my law firm maybe to something like that. Actually not. You don't ever want to hire a law firm that doesn't have the lawyer's name as part of the title, because it's probably not a real law firm. Of course, as you know from my recent email, that's a totally different topic. But to respond to your question, it's a diversionary tactic. The whole problem starts out with the developers. The developers have stifled the secondary market to resell a timeshare. They've done it purposefully. They control the entire market. When you have a car that you're done with, you can take it to the dealership or the used car lot and get half your money back from your car, use that money to buy another car. There's a secondary market. The same thing with a home. There's a secondary market. When you go to resell your home, you might even make money on it because the home will probably have retained its value. The timeshare is the one luxury consumer item that I'm aware of that does not only not hold its value, the value goes from whatever you paid for it to pretty darn close to zero in the first 10 days that you own it, that 10 days being your rescission period, because if you don't rescind the transaction within that 10 days, you're stuck with a lifetime contract. So it's a diversionary tactic, in my opinion. Why pay somebody to list your timeshare if there's nobody out there that wants to buy it? What good is a listing? And it's not like the real estate market where there's an MLS, where there are people actually looking for homes, because there's a strong secondary market in homes. So it's not like there's a centralized listing service like the MLS to list your timeshare. It goes on somebody's website. How do you know to look at that website, even if you were in the market to buy a timeshare, which almost nobody is? So again, it's a diversionary tactic. It takes the pressure off of them and puts it on somebody else. Don't be mad at me. Go be mad at so-and-so because you paid him $800 and he's not selling your timeshare. when I'm the one that made sure you'd never be able to sell your timeshare.
Well, and then is the reason they're not sending to, we've had on the show, remember Tom Tuggs, the pioneer of the resale market, his daughter Jessica O'Daniel, she will list it for free and function like a traditional real estate agent. Why are they not referring to someone like that but instead referring to a listing service?
So before we take on a client, most let me step back up and say most timeshares have no value whatsoever, no market value. There are a few, maybe 3% of all timeshares that do have a residual value. Before we take on a client, because we charge a fee to extricate that client from from their timeshare, we go to Tom and now Jessica. Tom's claims that he's retired. I guess he's getting closer and closer to it. But if there's a residual value, don't hire me. Put your property on the market and sell it, and be done with it, and save yourself a lawyer fee. That's not exactly what you asked me, but there's not enough people doing that because there's not enough timeshares that have that kind of value. So Jessica likes to take listings only when she thinks she can resell it. And those tend to be at ski resorts, at black sand beaches in Hawaii. Um, there's very few places that aren't overrun with resorts where a timeshare resort, if it has a special attribute to it, like being on a ski hill, there are very few resorts in the world that have any resale value. Look at Orlando. There are so many places that you can stay for a very reasonable amount. It's the law of supply and demand. If you go to Orlando and you're not staying at a Disney resort, you have many, many, many choices to choose from. The timeshares can't compete with the kind of money that you would have to compete with to reflect any kind of a value. So I know I'm kind of all over the place in my response, but it really is a supply and demand argument. And there aren't many Tom and Jessicas out there. There's maybe 2 or 3 timeshare brokers in the country that will bother with timeshares because there's just not enough of them that are worth marketing.
Well, there's about 60 that I'm aware of. I send some of my articles to all of them. But the other thing is, we're all aware of the unauthorized practice of law. Isn't there an unauthorized practice of real estate? And so, well, Jeremy from Destination Timeshare has just said the listing services are ARTA members, but some of these licensed brokers are ARTA members as well. But isn't there an unauthorized practice of real estate? This Sheila asked the person at Timeshares Only that said, when he said, yes, 8,000 to 11,000. And she said, are you a real estate agent? And he said, no. And according to Florida law, you must have a real estate license to suggest a listing, and you can lose your license if you exaggerate the listing. But do they get off of that? They don't have to worry about that because they're not a real estate agent? To me, that doesn't make any sense.
So excellent point. If you're not a licensed real estate broker, then you have nothing to lose, I guess. But they can't take a license away that you don't have. And there's a lot of people in the timeshare business that aren't licensed realtors. So you're going to find a lot of people in there purporting to be professionals that are not. Arguably, timeshares are no longer really a real estate product. Nowadays, they're points based. An attorney will tell you that.
Oh, we lost Mike for just a minute there. I'm sure he'll be back in just a minute. That happens every once in a while. Let's ask, I don't think Kim can fix that for us. But here's Nick Palavita. So Nick, very, very happy to see you. And my next question, that I wanted to ask Mike is when Cindy experienced this, where she attended a trade block presentation and they just kept going on and on about their attorney this and their attorney that. Isn't it illegal to be soliciting for an attorney?
No.
That's worse. Okay. We can't. Kim, we've got some real problems from Spain.
Sounds like an alien.
Okay.
I don't
While
know what
she's
to do.
while she's working on that, Irene, I looked up the customer reviews of Trade Block, and I told you they sounded like they were representing a lawyer when they contacted me, and there are several complaints the same way. It said when they called me on the phone to invite me to the meeting, it sounded like a class action lawsuit against Marriott for selling rooms at vacation resorts. That's the same technique they used with me, only they used the name Wyndham instead.
Okay.
Can you hear me, Irene?
Yeah, now you sounded like you were.
All right. I'll help you out a little bit. JD means just depends. Realize that in the United States, you're a state law system. So, like, I'm a licensed to practice law in Florida. Florida may have totally different unauthorized practice and advertising laws than other states. As a matter of fact, I will tell you, it does. For example, if you're a member of the Florida bar and you want to advertise, you actually have to send your ad to the Florida Bar Advertising Committee and have it specifically approved. You can't just blatantly advertise. So Florida is totally different than other states when it comes to advertising, and perhaps even in the unauthorized practice of law. So when you're dealing with timeshares, you're dealing generally with what I call state law issues, and they can vary from state to state. So Florida could treat it totally differently. I saw Mike sent me that case that Schutz and Bowen shut down this company, and they filed a suit based on Florida's unauthorized Deceptive Trade Practices Act, which is what I've actually sued people on. So I'm a little bit familiar with it. But it varies from state to state whether they have a Deceptive Trade Practices Act, and also varies from state to state what they consider unauthorized practice of law. Florida traditionally, because we have 100,000 members of the Florida Bar, is very restrictive, and they enforce UPL pretty strongly in the state of Florida. But then you can go to other states, generally out west, and they're the wild, wild west. They just really don't care. So it really depends. The law you get really depends on what state governs your particular case. And remember, timeshares, which you're discussing, is generally not governed under any federal law. So you have a real big problem here. In other words, a problem without a solution, basically. And a lot of it's caveat emptor, buyer beware. But how many people took timeshare classes before they bought a timeshare?
Right.
I mean, real estate classes. No, nobody did. So without any education whatsoever, you're going to make one of the most serious investments in your life. You got a real problem. I would suggest, I don't know if you've done this yet, Irene, having a timeshare course so people know what they're doing before they go see these people. In a way, I find it humorous. In a way, it's sad. They get scammed by the timeshare company, then they go to an exit company and they get scammed again. And I'm just going, am I missing something here? It'd be really good to have a timeshare course. I went to several of their events. Never bought, but I can tell you this: I had no timeshare courses to explain to me what I would buy anyway. So it's kind of a very challenging thing that no one has courses on it. So maybe that's something we could put together, or Mike could put together for Pod TV, a timeshare course. So people.
The problem is nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I think I'll buy a timeshare today.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
pulled off the street at the kiosk and go jump into this.
Even in law school, they don't teach it. They teach real estate law, but they don't teach timeshares. It's almost like you're in the black hole of law. So it's really a specialty, and it would be very helpful, I think, people to take a timeshare class. We could put it on the YouTube, probably get a lot of hits because you should know something about it before you make a major contractual purchase. That'd be my opinion.
Well,
Well,
and
you are making inroads on that, Irene, with this podcast.
yeah, I think there's as I said, we're not attorneys. And so when people ask me, should I stop making maintenance, stop payments? I can say, watch episode 24, August 5th. But what my other question is if you're a realtor, you have to be very careful of the word realtor in your title. It must be in your title. Why is it our legal minds today, why are they allowed to call themselves Encore Law when they're not a law firm? Consumer Law Protection, not a law firm. Why is that allowed? Mike,
You want to take that one?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Mike, you're more expert. Yes, I'm an attorney, but I actually hire attorneys to do my work because it's so specialized. So I have an immigration attorney on staff. I have a litigation attorney. I hire the attorneys. This is not my specialty. Okay, so I specialize in a very narrow area of qualified plans. But so I can speak generally. In Florida, okay, because I am a Florida attorney, you can't do this stuff. I mean, at least my experience with the Florida bar, if you're a non-lawyer, you put your name out there and you see anything like that, you report it to the Florida bar. The Florida bar will crush that organization. You don't have to even do anything for it. But remember, states are different. So you can go maybe to Arizona and they go, we don't care. So it's really, in my opinion, it's a state by state issue. I don't know what you've seen, Mike. Having a non-law firm put law behind them is basically, I mean, it may be just common law fraud. But go on.
Earlier in this podcast, Nick, I made the point: don't hire a company that doesn't have the lawyer's name in the name of the firm. Traditionally, law firms have always had names of individuals that are in the firm. Now, sometimes you have a senior partner that retires and they retain the name because the name has status and shows a firm that has been around a long time, and that's allowable. But if it's a name like Encore Law, I don't know of a reputable lawyer that wouldn't want his name involved in the name of the firm. Why do they allow that? I don't think the Bar Association has anything to do with it. I think it's the state that allows you to set up a name. They look to see that it's not similar to another name that they have on their registry. There's no other Encore Law, and they simply allow the name. You pay your filing fee, and you're Encore Law. Does it make you a law firm? Obviously, it does not make you a law firm. But people do not know. People don't know. And the lawyers don't do a good job of policing non-lawyers. They do a pretty good job of policing us lawyers. They police us really well. But non-lawyers, they don't have a license to lose. So they don't get policed as much, I guess.
Yeah. At least when I was practicing law firm was with Hampton, Palavita, Murphy, Cody, and Levy, we had to use our names because Florida would not allow trade names. So if you're a member of the Florida bar, you'd have to have your name behind it. Again, states can be different. So another state could allow this tomfoolery to take place. But there is a Uniform Deceptive Trade Practices Act. Now, when you see a uniform act, because I used to teach law school at Campbell University, uniform means it's not uniform. In other words, uniform means the states have the right to adopt it or they don't adopt it. Florida adopted it, so we have a Florida Uniform Trade Deceptive Practices Act. But you may live in a state, let's say Alaska, and they may never adopted it. I wouldn't know. I'm not an Alaska attorney. If you have a problem in Alaska, you need to hire an Alaska attorney. If you have a problem in Nevada, a Nevada attorney. Remember, Nevada allows gambling. Florida, not so much. So the thing is, it's a state law issue, and you just have to look at the various different states. I do, when I've seen enough of the show, I first of all, I think you should change it rather than timeshare solution, timeshare scams, because it just opened up my eyes. I had no idea how bad this whole area of the law is. I had absolutely no idea. But I agree with Mike. You know, when I go out and look, I look to hire an attorney. Why? Because of what he put out there. They have ethical they have ethical responsibilities to their bar association. They have to have a professional license. They defend their professional license. In pensions, they're considered professional service providers. You go out and they have a duty that is unlike anyone else, a duty of loyalty to their customer. You go out and hire a company. Company has duty of loyalty to their company. They have no duty of loyalty to you. So if Cindy hires Jones Timeshare Inc., okay, and I'm the president of Jones Timeshare Inc. Cindy, I have zero loyalty to you whatsoever.
To me.
I can just ram it any way that you allow me to do it. I have no professional responsibility. I have no ethical responsibility. I have no duty of loyalty. You just open yourself up for a major problem. Now, if you hire a lawyer or you hire a law firm, that's a whole different cat. So when I go out and I hire people and I look at something that's a serious transaction, like I'm purchasing real estate over here, I always go hire an attorney. It's worth every bloody dime.
Well, and Jeremy from Destination Timeshare, who has been on our show before, he reminded me that Encore Law Inc. is based in Texas, and I think there is an Encore Law on Wilshire Boulevard in California. But if they're based in Texas, but they're calling, if they come to Florida to do their road shows, and so would that fall under Florida or Texas?
Oh, yeah, we would take jurisdiction, of course. I mean, the thing is, it's different. If they stay in Texas, that's one thing. If they come to my great state of Florida, we're going to take jurisdiction of everything they say and do in the state of Florida. You can't say, hey, I'm Encore Law in Texas, then run to Florida and pretend you're Encore Law. As they say in Pawn Stars, that ain't happening. And the lawyers in Florida, I practiced there for 40 years. They will dog that firm right out of the state. I can guarantee it. They can just pack. Well, look at what happened. I think Mike said, okay, Schutz and Bowen. I used to clerk for one of the partners there, very good law firm. And they took down that other, whatever that was, timeshare purportedly exit company out of Orlando. So yeah, if Encore Law was to rear the ugly head in the state of Florida, they'd have to chop off pretty fast.
So Trade Block is their home address is in Texas, but they came to North Carolina.
I am not qualified to opine on Texas or North Carolina law.
Right.
So I can say nothing about this.
But we're thinking they would be obligated to North Carolina law when they came to North Carolina.
I am not qualified to opine on Texas or North Carolina law.
Right.
Oh, not North Carolina?
No, I'm a member of the Florida Bar only and licensed in federal court.
But
and
at
federal
the
courts are totally different. They have nothing to do with this stuff.
At the presentation that Cindy attended in North Carolina, they were pounding the table, promoting the name of the lawyer that they refer to. So
that was in Nevada.
Who is in Nevada? So should she file a complaint against that attorney in Nevada? A bar complaint?
I'm not qualified.
That's where the attorney is licensed.
So I'll defer. Go on, Mike.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
If that's where the attorney is licensed, that's where the complaint ought to be filed. But to everybody's point here, Nick, and to everybody's point, the jurisdiction in timeshares has been so obscured by the fact that these companies practice in many, many states. So it's almost impossible for an attorney to be licensed to practice in more than one or two states. I'm licensed in Florida and I'm licensed in Michigan. I guess I could have spent more time preparing for bar exams in other states. But since most of the timeshares originate in Florida, I took this Florida bar long after the Michigan bar, because I thought I would have more credibility with a practice in Florida, because that's where most of the timeshares are. Do I handle cases beyond Florida? Yes, when there's a connection between that timeshare and the state of Florida, where I know if I need to litigate against that timeshare, I can do it in the state that I'm licensed in. I'm comfortable doing that. but it's a much blurrier distinction than it used to be, and it's very confusing to members of the general public. And I don't have a clear-cut answer for you, but wherever the attorney is licensed to practice is where you would file a complaint, because that's where his license emanates from.
But I've heard you say, Mike, we talked about this a little bit, that I don't blame the lawyer that they named at this meeting. I blame the exit company, because they're the ones that led me to believe through the phone call, through their presentation, that they were a law group, that they were, going to use that I was going to be in touch with the lawyer. The same thing with the phone call I recently received from RFA Cancellation, Responsible, Focused, Accomplished Cancellation Company. I mean, the first guy on the phone said that an actual lawyer, an actual attorney would call me and give me a free consultation. And he said he would tell you what it takes to get you out of your contract. And then he said, you'll be dealing with an attorney, and we'll give you their bar number and all of that. And then he connected me to a different person. And I asked that person, because I assumed that was the lawyer. And he said, no, I'm not an attorney, when I asked him directly. But he said, we have a full legal team for our company that works to get people out of their timeshare. So it's the exit company that's asking me for this upfront fee that I blame.
I called that attorney that you mentioned, and I got a call from Trade Block saying, we don't want you calling that attorney anymore. So that attorney is well aware. He's not unaware, of course, because you would be in contact with that attorney. But what I'm noticing is the exit companies are basically having you do the work yourself, because the developers will not negotiate with the exit companies. And if they're just having them write up their own report, maybe adding some things, is that the unauthorized practice of law if the person that retains them is sending their report to the company and they're the ones filing the attorney general complaints? Is that still unauthorized practice of law?
In my judgment, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's a state law.
A lawyer, I'm sorry, Nick, go ahead.
I think in Florida, you're going to be hit with UPL. I see what these exit companies do. By the way, there is a way that an attorney not licensed in your state can actually practice in the state, and that's to be admitted what they call pro hac vice before the judge. But to do that, you actually have to have a lawyer in that state say that they want you to come in to practice pro hac vice, and then what they do is they let you actually argue. I've never done that before, because I can tell you I would feel very uncomfortable, because I don't know the legal system in various different states. But I've seen some attorneys, they'll get admitted what they call pro hac vice to handle one particular case in a state they're not licensed in. But again, when we go to unauthorized practice and you go to deceptive practices, you have to look at the state law, and it varies from state to state. So as you notice, this particular group, they filed in Texas. Texas may say, hey, we don't care. You can have a trade name, and don't even have to be a lawyer. They may not care. I don't know. I don't practice in Texas. You go to Florida, you got a serious problem. If they license themselves in Texas, they run to Florida, and you see these boys in Florida, they have a serious problem, because they have what they call in rem jurisdiction. You're inside the great state of Florida, and Florida, at least the attorneys I know, they will crucify that group. And that's one reason you saw that case, Schutzenbowen, $16 million judgment against the individuals and all the people that are involved. Not surprised about the exit companies. If I was an exit company, I'd be very scared. I'd be very careful as to where I do business, because you're really on the line whether or not you're engaged in unauthorized practice. If I was a client, I'd never hire them for one reason. At the end of the day, you may need to have somebody exercise legal power for you, which means they need to go to court and file a complaint. The lawyer has the power to do it. Your exit company does not. No further questions.
And Bill, could you weigh in when you signed up with the exit company in Washington State? Did they portray themselves as you would be represented by an attorney?
This to me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
When you retained the exit company, were you led to believe that you would be represented by an attorney?
I think it was implied, but I don't remember it being explicit. You know, it was a pretty slick presentation. You know, big names. You know, you've already been through the process once or twice with the timeshare purchase,
Right.
and it's almost like an extension of that. And at some point, we met Mike Flynn down in Florida, and it's really sad. I'm embarrassed to say this has been such a long time that my recall on it's not great, but it's probably pretty similar to what everybody else had. But yeah, the timeshare exit team, not the brand name, of course, make you think that, you know, they're all attorneys and they all know what they're doing, and it was a nightmare.
Yeah, and they did. I'm told, Mike, that in the beginning, these exit companies did have some success, but then I attended the trial that Nick referenced, where their lead witness for Wyndham said they made a decision in 2018 to just ignore the exit companies. Now, the other question I have is it just Westgate, or are the other timeshare companies requiring an affidavit that they say they will take it back, and they send you your packet of information and there's an affidavit you have to fill out, which is a legal document saying that you are not working with a third party, and that people have actually been sued for perjury? Is that just Westgate doing that? Or are they all having some form of an affidavit?
So we do have a client that it was in exactly that situation, and they were being sued by their resort, which was Westgate. I understand that most of the other resorts are following suit, but not requiring the affidavit. Westgate is being pretty aggressive in forcing somebody to sign an affidavit. Um, but as far as I know, most of the resorts are not working with exit companies. Um, but I think Westgate is the only one that is requiring that affidavit.
And when you default on your loan, what are the chances? Are they still? I always explain to people that the only time I've really heard of a company suing on the promissory note is if they retained a law firm. It almost seemed that they were using the owner as a pawn to punish the law firm. So people are always wondering, if I default on this $30,000 loan, are they going to sue me? How frequently does that happen? And are the developers successful when they do?
It's pretty infrequent. It can certainly happen. Finn Law Group was targeted by a resort. I won't mention the name of it. They went after a few of our clients, and we believe it was solely because they had hired us. So we took on the defense of all of those cases and didn't charge the clients any more money than they had paid us, just to get them out of their timeshare, because we felt that we had to stand behind those people and not allow them to be sued, targeted, just because they hired a lawyer. That seemed to us pretty much unconscionable. So we handled all of those cases, and I'm pleased to say that they've gone away, that resort that did that hasn't done that for over the last 4 or 5 years. To your broader question of can it happen to people that don't have lawyers? Yes, absolutely. You're signing a promissory note. that promissory note could be sold to somebody else. And if you default on the promissory note, you could be sued. What is the frequency that happens? I have no way to know that. I have no way to judge that. But I do believe it happens, but I do believe it's infrequent.
Well, and I think that Kim might have taken off to the doctor, so I don't know that she's going to present that. But do you have that chart, Mike, that you can talk about the difference? Oh, there it is. She's there. So,
There it is.
yeah, can you go through this chart for us? The difference
So,
between
so
using a law firm and an exit company?
thank you for that, Irene. And I think this is a very, very important distinction. And when Nick was speaking just a minute ago, I was smiling to myself because I said somebody must have slipped Nick the schedule because he actually talked about a lot of the things that are on this. I made it as simple as I could, and obviously it's biased in favor of law firms. But everything on here is absolutely true. Um, the name of it, of course, is qualification checklist comparison between a law firm and an exit company. And the first thing on it is, are you state licensed? Lawyer? Yes, I am. I have to be state licensed. I can't be a lawyer unless I'm state licensed. Exit company? No, there's no state license requirement. I can be an exit company with no qualifications whatsoever. I'm not even sure as for number two, educational requirement. I'm not even sure that a exit company has to be a high school graduate. I have found that most exit company people are former timeshare salespeople. For a lawyer, yes, we not only have to go through 4 years of college, we have to go to law school for 3 years. So we like to think that we're fairly well educated, and particularly as compared to somebody that doesn't have any educational requirements whatsoever. The next issue I think is very important: accountability. Are we accountable? Yes. If we don't do what we tell you that we are going to do as a client, you can file a bar grievance against us. If the grievance board agrees with you that we didn't tell you the truth about something, that we weren't open and honest with you, if we didn't give you our very, very best efforts, we could be subject to losing our license. We could be subject to censure. We could be subject to losing our license for a period of time. So we definitely want to be accountable to our clients because we know that our clients, well, number one, we should want to be accountable to our clients because we took their money and we're professionals. So that should be the reason that we want to be accountable. But if that isn't a sufficient reason, we know that the bar association can take our license away from us, and that's a further prod for us to make sure that we do the right thing by our clients. Exit companies don't have that requirement. An exit company could be closed down, and the owner of the exit company could open up the next day with a brand new company, brand new website, brand new phone number, and start all over again. He doesn't need a
Goes the
license.
money,
He
and there
doesn't
goes
need
the
it.
money back guarantee.
And there, thank you, Irene. There goes the money back guarantee. And we've seen that literally happen. I'm no fan of exit companies. There's no question about that. As attorneys, we have the ability to stop collection practices. There's a federal law. It's
Mhm.
called the FDCPA. Nick is nodding his head. He's familiar with it. The Federal Debt Collection Practices Act that basically says if you're disputing a debt and you hire a lawyer, the collection agency may no longer contact you and harass you to try to collect that debt. If you have an attorney that you've hired, and that's why we are hired by our clients. That's why the fact that an exit company may have lawyers, that doesn't help the customer. They're not the lawyers for the customer. They're the lawyers for the exit company. Our clients hire us directly. We contact the collection agencies directly. Hey, we're the lawyer for Joe Smith. You may no longer contact Joe Smith. You are ceased. You must cease and desist contacting Joe Smith. He's our client. If you want to try to collect money from Joe Smith, you have to contact us. And that's what the law says. An exit company cannot do that. And the collection practices, is that's the main thing that the developers like to do to pursue uh, people and harass them into paying. They hire a collection agency. Hiring a collection agency does you no good if you're a timeshare owner and you've hired an attorney. So again, that leads to the next thing on my list, the ability to actively represent timeshare owners. We represent a timeshare owner until the timeshare owner is satisfied that we have done what we told them that we were going to do, which was get them out of their timeshare contract. Our file remains open and active, and we protect a client from collection activities and arguably from litigation until the client is satisfied with our representation. Exit company, they can't make that representation. They can't do that. They're not lawyers. Sustainability, again, we stay active with the client no matter how long it takes. We stay active with that file. We protect and insulate that client from resort and collection practices until the client says, yes, you got me out of my timeshare. You've got my loan that I owed them canceled. You did a good job, Mike. You may feel free to close your file now. We don't close the file until the client says, yes, you may close the file now. I
Well,
think
and
that's really
one thing very important is that's shocked me is quite often the exit company is more expensive than the law firm.
yes. We've noticed
Amazing.
that. We've noticed that as well. And what can we say? What we've done is we've assessed how much time the average file takes us. Some files take longer than others. We don't like to charge clients hourly because clients hate to pay hourly because we can't tell a client when they say, how long is this going to take you? Well, we don't know. We have to negotiate a resolution with the developer, and the developer has a lot of control as to how long they're going to last before they finally decide that they're going to release that client. So how many hours are you going to spend, Mike? Well, I don't know, client. So you're telling me that you're going to charge me $300 an hour for every hour you spend? That's typically how lawyers charge. We can't do that. We don't do that. It's not fair to a client. So what we've done over the 15 years we've been doing this is we figured out roughly how many hours an average file takes us. We multiply that by our market rate, and that's how much we charge our client. And we have discovered that lo and behold, our fees, our fixed fees, which we cannot change, even though we might get stuck for a long time with a file, we can't change our fees. They are fixed per our contract with the client. Sometimes we get hurt. Sometimes we get lucky and the resort capitulates early, and maybe we make a little bit more on that if you're calculating it on an hourly basis. But what it averages out to is what we charge our clients. And we think that's the fairest way so that when a client hires us, they know exactly what our services are going to cost, and they know that they're not going to get another bill from us. My joke is that I was good friends with my divorce lawyer until I hired him to be my divorce lawyer, and I got a bill in the mail from him every month because my divorce, as in most cases, was a particularly complex one, and I learned to hate my divorce lawyer because I kept getting a bill from him every month. It's like, Bruce, when is this going to stop? Well, Mike, when is your divorce going to be over? Well, that's a real good question, Bruce. I wish we could both answer that question. But we're very aware that clients don't want to get put on a hourly rate because if you can't tell the clients exactly how much our fees are going to be, then it's very, very hard to get a client to feel comfortable with you.
And a law firm is not allowed to give a guarantee that it will resolve.
We are not. We like to tell our clients that we don't stop until the client is satisfied. And looking back over the past 15 years, I think each and every client case that we've resolved, and that's been thousands of files, has agreed that sometimes it took a little bit longer than they would have liked, but that they always got satisfactory results from us. We don't stop until the client is satisfied.
Okay, and we have 10 minutes, so I want to make sure I get my questions in everybody asked me to ask. Do you help people with my favorite is the U.S. Treasury has sanctioned a Jalisco Mexican cartel for distributing fentanyl and timeshare exit scams in America. I mean, you can't make this up. So does your firm help with Mexican timeshares? I've heard that an expert say if you sign in Mexico, it doesn't matter, you can default. Others, and another attorney said yes, but if they have a collection agency in the US, they can still pursue that mortgage. Can you comment on that?
You're absolutely right in what you said. Your comments are right, are spot on. We used to represent some of the timeshare clients with certain Mexican resorts because those resorts were willing to work with us, and we could comfortably take on a file with that. We could pretty well assure a client, yeah, we're pretty darn sure we can handle this for you. It's not within our jurisdiction. We can't litigate in Mexico. So over the years, we've taken on fewer and fewer clients with Mexican resorts. And now that the cartels have seemed to have taken over many of those resorts, our policy has basically been we don't take on any more Mexican resorts because the cartels are very, very powerful criminal organizations, and we don't have the jurisdiction to go after those people.
Yeah, and you mentioned in your article about those that call and say they have a buyer for your timeshare, but then you took it up to the next level where you said they have a buyer and they are wiring money to foreign countries. There's a lot of that going on, and you mentioned in your article someone wired over a period of time $1.3 million to get out of a timeshare. But did you mention what they paid? Do you know what they paid originally for the timeshare?
The best example I can give you, that person never hired us. There was nothing we could do for that person, but we did. I'm going to say represent an individual that paid over $191,000, and I can comment on that fact situation specifically because that client, we never took their money, but we did try to help them get some of their money back by tying them in with the FBI. I don't know if he ever got any money back or anything, but I can tell you that he paid $33,000 for a timeshare. And what astounded me about that particular case is that the timeshare that he purchased was not in Mexico, it was in Utah. Now, go figure out how he ended up wiring money to Mexico for a Utah timeshare. I don't know, but that's the most egregious case that I ever had hands on. The 1.3 million was told to me by a female attorney that I know in Washington D.C. who had contacted me after that 1.3 million was spent by her mother. Her mother contacted her and said, "Honey, can you loan me $10,000?" And this attorney said, "Mom, you got you got over $1 million in the bank. I know you do. Why do you need $10,000?" And the mom said, "Honey, I don't have that money anymore. I wired it all to get out of a timeshare, and I just need another 10,000, and then I'll really be out of it." And that's when the lawyer called me, and there was nothing we could do. Once the money is wired out of the country, there's absolutely nothing anybody in this country can do. You don't even know where it goes after it's wired. Even the FBI threw up their hands on that one.
Well, and for
So that's the story. Those are the stories.
our last 5 minutes, we have three things we'd like to try to find a lawmaker to propose a bill. And you're probably going to tell me this would never work, but the oral representation is buried in 80 pages of fine print, and it's a very common complaint to say they gave me a USB port, but it didn't have the contracts on it, and so that oral representation buried in 80 pages of fine print, it's in other contracts where it's appropriate, but and a lobbyist did tell me he thought this was the most reasonable thing he's ever asked a lawmaker. Could it be that just like if you see a TV ad or a magazine ad at the bottom, it says it's a solicitation? But with timeshare, it's like, no, it's not a sales presentation. They're just going to give you information. So would it be possible to have the oral representation, and the how I got to know you was reading Gretchen Morgensen's Pulitzer Prize article in 2016, January, our anniversary, where I read this attorney quoted that as called the license to lie clause. And I went bingo and called you on the phone. But wouldn't it be appropriate to have that disclosed at or prior to the presentation? You get an email, you're going to attend, you get an appointment card. Why can't they just put under there, do not rely on oral representations to make your purchase?
I suppose they could, but since they control the show, um, and nobody's telling them that they have to do that. But your point is force them to do that. Would that make a big difference? I'm not sure. Yeah, yes, I mean, and that was my quote that I don't know if you mentioned it or not, but that was my quote that Gretchen quoted me
I
on the
know,
salesman's
yeah.
license to lie clause. In case you didn't want to mention that, I want to mention that because I'm particularly proud of that quote. But to go on and answer the question, how much good would it really do, given that they swallow you up with 18 pages of other stuff and they're fast talkers and they wear you down and you don't even know what you're signing by the time you sign it? I'm not sure. If you want to reform the timeshare industry, require the timeshare developers to buy back the timeshares after a 3-year period or 5-year period if somebody is dissatisfied with it. That's do it on that end. Don't trust the consumer to know what it is that they're doing. They're on their honeymoon, they're at a vacation place, they weren't intending to sign a legally binding contract. They're not paying much attention to what the contract says. That's the way it's designed to be. Don't put that kind of legal responsibility on the consumer. Put it on the other end. Put it on the developer. If I hate my timeshare after 3 years and I reach out to my developer and say, this thing sucks. I don't want it anymore. Buy it back. Make them buy it back. Do they have to buy it back for 100 cents on the dollar? No. Make them buy it back for 50 cents on the dollar.
I don't think we can ever
If you
accomplish
want
that.
if you want to clean up the industry, Irene, that's how you're going to clean up the industry. The consumer is not going to do it. They're just not paying enough attention.
What about we've had where they promised me I could do 3 weeks every year and it was only 1 week every year. The contract rescission period should begin, because I always say you should have read the contract, you had 10 days to cancel. Well, in that case, reading the contract doesn't help. The rescission period doesn't help. Why shouldn't the rescission period begin the day the purchaser has access to the booking site?
I agree 100%. Make it happen.
Would that be a possible, we could reach out? Kim's not here. She's always, we need to change the law. So maybe that's one that I think maybe you might say we might have a chance at that one. And the last one, we have 2 minutes left. If the closing is recorded and used against the purchaser in the event of a dispute, shouldn't the purchaser be offered the opportunity to record the sales session?
Of course, they should.
I was not
Irene,
even allowed to take a picture of the paper.
So
Yeah.
so you guys, the laws are written by the Congress, but the laws are provided, the timeshare laws are provided to Congress by ARDA, which actually writes the laws, hands them to their favorite congressman, gives them a bunch of money, and says, "This is the law we would like to see you pass." And ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to tell you this. This is how it really works. But you can propose all the laws you want, and they're not going to get passed. Propose a law that says that the developer has to buy the thing back for 50 cents on the dollar after 3 years. That will work. Believe me. That's the only thing in my mind that'll work. And I've been doing this for a long time, folks.
Well, thank you. And Nick, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah.
And you were on with Mike before. It's I think our most watched episode. And just this Ask a Lawyer segment has just helped so many people. And we hope to see you back in the future as well. So,
Well, I hope to be back to continue to boost your ratings, although I'm not sure I'm really the source of boosting the ratings. I talk loud. Maybe that helps. I don't know.
so Nick, you have any final comments before you close us out today?
Yeah, I would say before you buy a timeshare, go listen to a lot of these videos. That's all I can say, because I didn't know very much about the industry till I started seeing your videos, Irene, and it scared the jeebers out of me. I'm just grateful that I didn't buy one. That's me. Okay, and I guess we should end it right at the hour. Okay, we'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you.